we're here tonight to talk about headaches, and headaches is a big topic. They're so prevalent. One of the things I mentioned in my promotion for this workshop is just how often I get told in practice when I ask people whether they get headaches, and people say just the normal ones, right? Or they say not that often. And what they mean by not that often is sometimes up to a couple of times a week, which is astounding to me. And so, headaches have to a large degree been normalized in our modern society, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The reasons why that might be, and there's lots of them. Because the first point I want to make about headaches is that there's no one headache, right? As in, we talk about headaches as if they're all the same thing, and sometimes we separate headaches and migraines. But the reality is, there's a lot more than that, right? There's so many different potential causes for headaches. There's so much we don't know about headaches. And as a result, there's lots of different potential solutions for headaches. So, as we go along tonight, I'm going to talk to you about lots of different potential natural solutions for headaches. And I want you to understand that some of them you may have tried and they may have worked great for you. Some of them you may have tried, they may not have worked for you at all. And I totally get that, and that's okay, because your headache is not the same as someone else's headache. The cause of your headache, the headache is just the symptom. It's not the cause. It's really important to remember. We talk about headaches as if they are a one-off entity, but depending on what's causing your headaches, there can be greatly different degrees of the problem and also greatly different solutions. So I'm just checking here in the comments, because some of the comments aren't actually coming up here in the same feed. So, okay, good. That's fine. So I think some of the comments are coming in on various different pages, not necessarily coming up into my Dr. Brett Hill feed here, which is always interesting. Anyway, I will make sure afterwards, if there are any questions that I've missed, I come back and cover over them. All right. But the first thing I want you to know is that, as I said, headaches are not normal. Getting headaches once a week, twice a week, even once a month is not normal, right? That's a lot of headaches. That's not a normal amount of headaches. That might be a common amount of headaches, right? So you might talk to people around you and they might suggest that they also get headaches once a week, but that doesn't mean it's normal. That just means it's common, okay? And really, there's really good reason why headaches shouldn't be ignored, because sometimes headaches can be a symptom of something really serious, right? So we're talking about things like tumors, we're talking about blood clots, traumatic brain injuries, we're talking about medication side effects, we're talking about infections of the central nervous system, and many, many others, right? So there are a lot of things that can cause headaches that can be really serious, right? So if you are getting headaches, then it's really important you speak to a health professional about what's going on, so that you can get to the bottom of it, not only so that you can find some solutions for your headaches, but also because potentially it could be a sign of something a lot more dangerous. Okay, so that's my, first caveat. And when it comes to headaches, there's a few things that you really want to look out for in terms of serious headaches, right? So, stiff neck is one of them, right? Now that, there can be huge variations in stiff neck, and stiff neck can be quite a common symptom for some people, but a stiff neck associated with a headache can be something really simple and biomechanical, but it can also be a sign of something more serious, right? A rash associated with your headache, a very high severity of your headache. They typically say that if it feels like the worst headache you've ever had before, then it's worth getting it checked out, because it might be something different. Things like vomiting, confusion, slurred speech, obviously all signs of potential traumatic brain injury, amongst other things. Fever, obviously important in terms of potential infection of the central nervous system. Paralysis, I think if you got paralysis, you'd probably be getting concerned anyway and want to go and get it checked out. And then also visual loss, right? So once again, obviously some real neurological signs and symptoms that may be going on there. So, if you're getting those symptoms, and even if you're not getting those symptoms, really, headaches is something you should be getting checked out by a health professional. We often just assume that it is just common and normal, and because it gets so normalized on TV and in advertising that it's just a simple thing, and you just pop a simple pill. Incidentally, those simple pills that you can just buy, over the counter, are some of the most lethal pills in Australia, right? So the largest cause of death from medication, they call it iatrogenesis, is actually as a result of those simple pills that are available over the counter, So we need to think differently about it. We need to be mindful of that fact, because whilst it can seem like it's just a simple problem with a simple solution, and it can be made to seem like that often, it can often be a lot more serious. So don't take them lightly, right? And as I said, there's no one headache. There's so many different types of headaches. So, we can talk about, just to name a few, things like tension headaches, cluster headaches, migraine headaches, hemicrania continua, which is a headache just on one side of your head, an ice pick headache, which is one of the most descriptive ones, a thunderclap headache, a sinus headache, a cervicogenic headache, which we'll talk about a bit later, or a hormonal headache, right? So all of these can be different causes of headaches, and obviously being different causes of headaches can have different degrees of severity, different symptoms, but also different solutions. So I want you to understand that there are lots of potential headaches. They're not just all one. So as I said, I'm going to go through lots of potential solutions for you tonight. If there are some there that you've tried and have failed, then don't be distressed by that. Don't be distraught by that. Just move on, because there are others that may work. And often these headaches can be a combination of causes, and sometimes require a combination of solutions. So, there may be multiple causes of your headache, and it may be that you need to look at multiple of those avenues in order to do something about those headaches as well. So just bear that in mind. I will keep checking into my my notes here, because I do notice there are comments coming through in various different sources that aren't necessarily coming through on my feed here. I'm not sure why that's happening more tonight than it has other nights, but regardless, I can see some hellos coming through there as I'm looking here. So hello to Caroline, who I see just commented there, and hello to Paris, who I think has just tagged in Mick, who I'm assuming is probably suffering from headaches too. So as I said, there may be a combination of causes, there may be a combination of solutions. And to here, I've just seen it said, to whom do we need to consult first, orthopedic or neurologist? And once again, that probably depends on what exactly is going on. But I think either of those that you go and see, whether it is a doctor, a chiropractor, a physiotherapist, you're probably not going to go straight to a neurologist. You're probably going to go to your doctor first before getting a referral to a neurologist if that's what's required. But any of those should be suitably trained in order to identify those dangerous types of headaches and where you might need more care and a referral to an appropriate professional. So I think any of those would be appropriate in those situations if you are concerned. And if you are, if you're at the pointy end of that, if you are seeing, a really high fever, confusion, slurred speech, paralysis, those kind of things, I'd be going to the medical professional in that instance, because that is more of a medical emergency. And if you have less than that, then perhaps a more functional headache, then something like a chiropractor would be a great point of call, because they tend to have more tools in their toolkit in terms of that more functional side of the equation as well, is what I would be recommending. But as I said, you can head in whichever direction suits you. I'm not here to give certainly prescriptive advice on that over the internet on Facebook Live. This is, as always, the caveat, general health information. I'm not necessarily your chiropractor and haven't had a chance to sort of assess you more thoroughly. So, I don't want to be prescriptive about that. But headaches are strongly linked with stress, right? And so whilst there are a large variety of different headaches and a large variety of different headache causes, and a large variety, they all seem to have a common theme in that stress seems to impact on all of them, both in terms of their creation, where stress, and when I talk about stress here, this can be physical stress, this can be chemical stress, this can be emotional stress. All of those seem to be linked with the creation of headaches, and all of those seem to be potentially linked with the resolution of headaches, or at least the minimization of headaches as well. So we're talking a lot about stress tonight, and that's a really important aspect of it. We see that in our modern society, where we look at what we call sympathetic dominance. In other words, for many of us in our modern society, fight or flight response is switched on far more than it should be, sometimes seemingly almost permanently. And there are a whole raft of downstream consequences to that. Okay, and one of those potentially being headaches. So the stress component, as I said, physically, chemically, and emotionally, is a really important component that we want to look at when it comes to headaches. So, obviously on that front, then, one of the things you can do if you are suffering from and struggling with headaches is focus on relaxation. Focus on making sure you're getting me time, just quiet time to decompress and to de-stress and to get away from whatever it is that stresses you out, whether that's work or family or money or whatever that may be. Finding what it is that makes you relaxed. I'm big on not being too prescriptive around me time, because I'm very conscious that me time can look very different to different people. And so, whilst classically people will talk about me time and they'll talk about things like meditation or yoga, I'm fully cognizant that meditation and yoga isn't for everybody. For me, I'm much more likely, whilst I have at times done some yoga and have at times done some meditation, I'm more likely to find de-stressing in doing some exercise, right? Or playing cricket, or going fishing, right? Or spending some time with my kids sometimes. And so, what is me time and what is de-stressing for some people may well be stressing for other people. And exercise is a good example of that, where, the quantity and the intensity of the exercise you do can either de-stress your body or stress out your body. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. All right. But in terms of relaxation, finding some me time, taking a break, it might just be a night off, it might be a weekend off, it might be a full-blown holiday, but making sure you're regularly taking some time to get away and to relax and to decompress and to de-stress can be a really useful strategy if you are suffering from headaches. Okay. And so, whilst when you're in the middle of a cracking headache, that may not be feasible or possible for you, although sometimes it may. Sometimes you may find that when that headache hits, just getting some quiet time, possibly in a dark, quiet room, just to decompress might be the best thing you can do in order to reduce the severity and the duration of that headache. Okay. Hydration is a big one in terms of headaches. Often that is one of the first things I'll talk to people about if they are suffering from a headache, is getting that glass of water. I know some people have sort of hypothesized when, people do take a pill and a glass of water, whether it is in fact the pill or the glass of water that's making a bigger difference. And, obviously there's been, research behind those pills suggesting that maybe the pill does have a greater impact than the placebo. But sometimes I do think the hydration is a really important factor in that. And so if you are not getting enough water, then consuming more water is a good idea. There's not a lot of research around how much water you should consume, if I'm perfectly honest. I have researched this thoroughly a number of times and failed to come across really anything conclusive in this regard, which is always surprising to me. There is some stuff around how much water you might need to consume in order to reduce your risk of kidney damage, but there's not much in terms of how much water you actually should consume if you want to be healthy and functioning well. So my best advice in terms of drinking water is really drink when you're thirsty. But the second part of it is be careful if you are consuming diuretics, so tea, coffee, alcohol, that are actually going to dehydrate you further, and they're going to throw out that natural feedback loop that your body has in order to let you know that you're thirsty. So if you are consuming excessive amounts of tea, coffee, and alcohol, then you might want to consume a little bit more water than just when you're thirsty, right? You may have to overcompensate a little bit for the fact that you are skewing your natural hydration mechanisms, if that makes sense. Now, I'm hoping this is all still coming through okay. You guys have gone quiet, so let me know if it's still coming through okay. Let me know if you've got any questions about any of these points as we go along. As always, I have got a lot of points to get through tonight, so I'm going to keep moving, and hopefully, as I said, if there's anything I'm rushing through or that's not making sense or you've got questions about, then please let me know, okay? But sleep is the next one I'm going to talk about, right? And so, I know if there's anyone listening who has a cracking headache right now, you're probably getting frustrated with me by this stage because I'm recommending what are probably longer term solutions for the most part, right? When you're in the middle of a cracking headache, just falling asleep may not always be easy. However, in the long run, getting enough sleep is one of the really key ingredients you can do and you can control, assuming you can get to sleep okay. And perhaps another time we will do a entire workshop on getting to sleep okay, because that's a really important one. But making sure you are prioritizing your sleep, making sure you're preparing adequately for sleep, and making sure you're allocating enough time for sleep can be a really important component in reducing your risk of getting headaches, and also recovering from headaches when you have had them as well. Okay, so once again, I think sleep is a really underrated one. Breathing exercises, once again, as a mechanism to de-stress. There are a million different ways you can do breathing exercises in order to help regulate your nervous system. And in some ways, I almost think it doesn't matter which one you do. I think actually the act of being conscious, the act of being mindful of your breathing, is probably what has the biggest impact. So, once again, you can do, you can count your breaths in and out. You can do square breathing. You can do, Wim Hof have a certain regime for breathing, which is a bit more extreme in terms of their cold immersion therapy. There are, a number of different ways you can go about doing breathing exercises, and sometimes it can be just as simple as taking 3 deep breaths consciously, right? Just stopping yourself just for that moment to take 3 deep breaths. And for those of you who are listening in, I'd encourage you to do it right now. Just stop for a few minutes or for a few seconds. Well, don't stop, just keep listening. But just take 3 deep breaths, and let me know in the comments what you notice. Just from 3 deep breaths, like the simplest of simple solutions, how that makes you feel different, not just in terms of headaches, but just different generally. And my experience is that it really can change people's state. I do this with people in practice all the time. Often when they're running late for their appointment and they're racing in and they're obviously stressed and frazzled and often profusely apologizing and just rattled. And often what I do is I just sit them on the table, I put my hands on each of their shoulders, and I say, just take 3 deep breaths. And you can feel the change within them. Like I can literally feel the tension come out of their shoulders. It's a fascinating experience. So breathing exercises can be a really useful way to de-stress. In terms of, I guess, some of the more acute solutions for headaches, one of them that is reported a lot, and once again, I'll say that a lot in terms of headaches. They're reported a lot. They're not necessarily shown to be beneficial in the research, because the research is really vague around headaches and headache solutions. And as I said, I think a large part of that is because there are so many different causes for headaches. There are so many different types of headaches. So trying to have a double-blind randomized control study showing one solution for headaches is very difficult, because one solution isn't going to work necessarily for all of the different types of headaches. Okay, so having said that, one that does seem, for a large variety of types of headaches, is a cold compress. Okay, so putting a cold compress, just a cold flannel across your forehead or across the back of your neck, seems to be quite effective for people in helping them with headaches. Now, the theory behind this is that it may well be that it's causing your blood vessels to constrict, and often with headaches and migraines, it can be the blood flow going to your head, and an imbalance in that regulation of the blood flow going to your head, which may cause the headaches. And we'll talk later in terms of some of these solutions that you do need to be careful with that. And so, if you restrict the blood flow to your head too much, then as soon as you take that stimulus away, your body's response is going to be to increase the blood flow to your head. And I think that is probably why they suggest a cold compress rather than an ice pack in terms of helping with headaches. And obviously, for many people, you'll notice that if you do put an ice pack too close to your head, that is a headache creator. And anyone who's done ice baths or cold showers may well have experienced that before as well. Alyssa says, I've been suffering from headaches for years and have just recently found this out. It works a treat. I'm assuming that's referring to the cold compresses, Alyssa. And if so, that's fantastic. As I said, that is one that is reported by many people to work quite effectively. Another one that seemingly can be really beneficial for people suffering headaches and indeed migraines is minimization of light. So light can be a real trigger for people in terms of headaches, and especially really blue light. So, I'm in my office here, and a relatively new office. This one is. I haven't had a chance yet to change the lighting as I would wish. And so I am very much under downlights at the moment, and getting lots of blue light. I do actually have my blue light blockers here, and I actually might put them on now because I should be doing it anyway. And if I'm going to use this as an example, I may as well practice what I preach and put on my blue light blockers. So these are some blue light blocking glasses. You'll notice these are kind of the clear ones. So these are a lesser blue light blocking than some of the heavier duty ones that have the real orange light to them. However, I find these really beneficial and easy to use when I'm working away, where they're not, not totally cutting out the light when I'm trying to work away at things online. But I find the blue light blockers beneficial in terms of cutting out some of that blue light. And then once again, if you do have more severe headaches, you may find just a totally dark room may be beneficial in that regard as well. Okay, so the blue light blockers would be the milder solution that day to day might actually help you reduce the creation of those headaches. And then, as I said, in a more severe situation, you may find totally eliminating light might be helpful for you as well. Exercise. It can also be a really beneficial for people suffering from headaches. And people are often surprised by this, in that, if you are in the middle of a cracking headache, probably the last thing you feel like doing is doing some exercise. However, it has been shown in many people that can actually help reduce the severity and duration of the headache. And typically the type of exercise you would do during a headache would be very low and slow, right? So we're talking about just really slow stretches, yoga, those type of movements, maybe even just moving your neck, just getting particularly your neck, because your neck is often a pain generator in terms of headaches, but just getting some movement into there. It is very much linked in with that stress response that we mentioned earlier, because we know that when you move, especially when you move your spine, it causes messages from your spine, or 80% of them from your spine, the other 20% from the rest of your body. It causes messages to be sent up to your brain, which then release dopamine and serotonin. They help to de-stress your body, help to de-stress your brain, and that can be really useful in the management of headaches. So if you are suffering from a headache, whilst you may feel like you just want to lie down and do absolutely nothing, you may find just a little bit of light, gentle movement to be beneficial in that regard. You may also find, when you're not acutely suffering from a headache, then doing some more exercise, an exercise that does get your blood pumping and your heart rate up and your blood vessels exercising, may be beneficial in terms of reducing the frequency and severity of your headaches later on as well. Okay, so you may not want to do the more intense exercise whilst you're actually suffering a headache, but when you're not suffering a headache, if you can do more exercise on a more regular basis, that can help reduce your chances of getting a headache later on as well. Okay, so exercise, once again, can be a really beneficial, and if you go too hard too often, you can definitely put yourself into fight or flight, right, by going too hard too often with the exercise, and that would then likely be detrimental in terms of your headaches and causing more headaches. So there's a delicate balancing act there, where you need to move. Your body requires movement in order to thrive, in order to be healthy, but you can overdo it. And especially, I think, sometimes when you are burning the candle at both ends, then if you're overdoing it in terms of your exercise, that can actually lead to a detrimental effect as well. And yeah, Alyssa says, I can't imagine doing this, but we'll definitely test that theory with yoga. Well, make sure you jump in, Alyssa, into our Healthy Lifestyle Choices group next time you do have a headache and you try some yoga, and let us know what you think, because I'll be really curious to hear. Obviously, one person doesn't prove or disprove a theory, but I'd certainly be interested to hear how you go with that, because, as I said, it is challenging for people sometimes to get their head around that one. Tahir asking, posture and headaches, is there any relation? Do we need to be conscious for good posture during sleep and long use of laptop usage? And the answer to that, Tahir, is absolutely yes. And you've just jumped ahead to my next point perfectly. So you've given me a lovely little segue into the next point, which is about good spinal function and proprioception. So we've just spoken about how those messages from your body, and especially from your spine, going up to your brain, are really important for de-stressing. And so there's a real neurological component to why poor posture, poor spinal function or spinal dysfunction, or what we as chiropractors would call subluxation, can lead to headaches. And why, working on getting your spine functioning better, getting your spine moving better, reducing that interference to your nervous system, improving that proprioceptive feedback back to your brain can be really beneficial in terms of headaches. So, this is one of the reasons why there's some really good research showing chiropractic to be very beneficial for people with headaches. And so I would certainly encourage you, if you have been suffering from headaches, to get checked out by a chiropractor. And it's not just that neurological component either. There's the biomechanical, the structural component as well, where, it's been said that for every inch your head comes forward, which is that sort of posture you're talking about, particularly in terms of the laptop usage, it's been said that for every inch your head comes forward, then you end up with 10 times the weight on the muscles at the back of your neck. And so those suboccipital muscles particularly, but really all of those muscles down into your neck, sometimes the scalenes and the sternocleidomastoids, sometimes the trapezius muscles, they can create what is called a cervicogenic headache, where that tension in the muscles of the neck can actually refer up to the head and cause headache-like symptoms. Often it's that classic headache that sort of starts at the back of your neck, comes up and over and sort of settles in behind your eye. That's the classic description of that cervicogenic headache. And so, yes, the solution to that certainly is getting your neck checked by a chiropractor, just seeing if there is a subluxation present there, seeing if you can get that joint moving better, reduce that interference to the nervous system, allow the body to be capable of coming back into better posture, but then also possibly adding to that some of the postural exercises that we've talked about on previous videos in the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, particularly the posture pole one, if you have a look at that. Then the foam rolling exercises you can do to help that head come back into position can be really beneficial as well. So that's certainly important in terms of the posture. Once you have seen the chiropractor and got the spine and nervous system functioning better, and you're doing exercises to help improve your posture, then looking at the things that generated that problem in the first place is a really good idea too. So, looking at, as you said, your posture when you're sitting on the laptop, how you set up your desk, which is another video I've got inside the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group. How you set up your car even. Yes, the way you sleep. So trying to keep your spine nice and neutral while you're sleeping. So not too many pillows if you're on your side, so that you're heading one way or the other. Certainly not too many pillows if you're on your back, hiking your head forward, because most people already come forward too far as it is. So certainly, as a preventative measure, focusing on your posture in all of those different aspects is a really good idea. Alyssa says, I've got a chiro, I've seen a significant difference in my headaches since seeing on a regular basis. Highly recommend. That's great to hear, Alyssa. That's certainly my experience in practice a lot of the time as well. So on that same note, then things like stretching and massage can be really beneficial in terms of releasing those muscles in and around your neck and in and around your head. So looking at, as I said, your suboccipital muscles at the back, you're chewing the muscles around your TMJ, your temples, obviously most people will recognize and often naturally will do a bit of a temporal massage in order to help reduce some tension on their headaches. Up around the cranials, right into the trapezius muscles, the scalenes, the sternocleidomastoid around the front there. Massaging and releasing trigger points in those can be really beneficial in terms of releasing headaches. And once again, if your posture is not good, if your spinal function is not good, if there's an underlying structural and neurological reason why those muscles are tightening up in the first place, then if you don't deal with that, then it's likely to come back pretty quickly. Okay, and so you may find those muscles tightening straight back up again. So that's important to bear in mind. I'm just going to check online here, see if there's any other comments coming through that I want to see. And it looks like so far not too bad. I'll just check in a couple of these other spots because it is going into a couple of different pages, this one. Facebook always changes how I go between the pages, so I'll just have a look here and see if there's any comments. Okay, no, we're going okay. Good stuff, guys. So stretching and massage we've spoken about. Caffeine, I always know when I start talking about caffeine and coffee particularly on any of my workshops, it gets people talking because suggesting to people often that they reduce or eliminate their caffeine usage can be a sensitive topic. And caffeine in terms of headaches is an interesting one because there is some research to suggest that in the short term, caffeine may be beneficial for people suffering from a headache. Okay, and so once again, this is because the caffeine will tend to put you into that fight or flight response. It tends to stimulate your body, tends to cause a constriction of your blood vessels, which in some cases can actually help alleviate the symptoms of headaches and migraines. Once again, the challenge with that is that in the longer term, that can then lead to the dilation of those blood vessels and lead to more headaches and migraines as well. So I don't think caffeine is a good long-term strategy for headaches, particularly because it is a diuretic, so it will tend to dehydrate you at the same time as well. So whilst some people, whilst there is some research suggesting it's beneficial and it may be beneficial in the short term, as a general rule, I would suggest that if you are suffering from headaches, you may want to reduce your caffeine intake, and that may well be beneficial to you. I would say especially reducing your caffeine intake in the second half of the day, when your cortisol levels should naturally be coming down and you move further and further away from that fight or flight response as you start preparing to sort of shut off and head to bed and sleep as well. So I would say especially in the second half of the day, but certainly really throughout the whole day, then minimizing your caffeine consumption is probably a good idea in the long run. Alcohol can be a little bit similar in that sometimes people will notice a short-term benefit. However, longer term, it does tend to lead to dehydration. It tends to lead to inflammation. Some of the chemicals in the alcohol, the ethanol and others, can actually be migraine triggers and tends to lead to the dilation of blood vessels. So all in all, alcohol is much more likely to cause a headache than to resolve a headache, and not just in terms of the the hangover headache the next day, but in terms of headaches, on a regular basis throughout the rest of your day, week, month. Then the alcohol can have a detrimental effect in that regard as well. Laura says, I've weaned myself completely off caffeine due to heart issues. How I find if I get a migraine, sometimes a cup of coffee is enough to stop it. Yeah, so there you go. That once again, Laura, that is what the research will tend to indicate, is that sort of in the moment, it may actually be somewhat of a solution. However, in the long run, it may be detrimental as well. So, you may want to be judicious in terms of how and when you use that. Smoking is another one, a really interesting. Smoking, the nicotine has actually been shown to stimulate some of the pain-sensitive nerves as they pass through the back of the throat, which is fascinating. So, smoking, as we know, has a raft of detrimental effects on your body, but one of them may actually be headaches. Smoking has also been shown to dehydrate you. There's certainly some good research suggesting that smoking dehydrates the discs in your spine. And so it's reasonable to suggest that it may be dehydrating you in other areas of your body as well. And so for a raft of reasons, if you're suffering from headaches, it might just be that added reason you need to give up smoking, even though you already know there are lots of great reasons to give up smoking. But certainly that may be one of them, and it may actually be causing head pain and headaches. So giving up smoking is a great idea anyway, but this might just be an additional one. Magnesium, as we all know, magnesium is really beneficial in terms of the relaxation of muscles and the relaxation of nerves. And so here we're talking about both your skeletal muscles, which might be causing referrals up into your head, but also your blood vessels. Relaxing those muscles may also help overall improve your circulation. And then neurologically, for all those neurological based headaches, then the magnesium may also help sort of decrease the tone of your nervous system and de-stress your nervous system to a degree as well. And so leafy green vegetables and nuts are really the best dietary sources of magnesium. Being mindful of your diet, that your diet isn't too acidic, because that will tend to neutralize the acid. Use the magnesium to neutralize the acid, and as such you may not get as much benefit from the magnesium you are consuming. And if you are chronically deficient in magnesium, then you may see benefit in a magnesium supplementation to get yourself back up to a quote-unquote normal level, because that can take some time. Vitamin B12 is another one. So vitamin B12 we know is really important for the brain and for the nervous system. Obviously comes from predominantly animal products. There are a couple of exotic sources of vitamin B12, but really predominantly from animal products is where you get your vitamin B12, and has been shown to be beneficial in the treatment of headaches. It has also been shown that if you are supplementing with vitamin B12, you can overdo it. So, as with most things, there tends to be a bit of a bell curve here, doesn't there? Where if you have too little, it causes a problem, but also if you have too much, it causes a problem. And so, if you overdo your supplementation with vitamin B12 and B vitamins in general, seem to have some both positive effect on headaches at lower doses and negative effect at higher doses, but particularly vitamin B12. So be mindful of that. If you are deficient, then get it up there. If you are supplementing, then don't overdo it, because both of those can cause headaches. And then there's a whole bunch of triggers. And so as a result of some of the ingredients in these foods, they may actually trigger an immune response or an inflammatory response within your body that has been really associated with headaches and migraines. And so some of these are more headaches, some of these are more migraines, but I think just, if you are suffering from headaches, these are things you might want to try as an elimination diet for several weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, to see whether it makes a difference for you. And in fact, you may even want to go, if that's not working, you may even want to try and eliminate all of these for a period of 3 or 4 weeks and then gradually reintroduce them one at a time to see what's having an effect on you. And so that would be things like chocolate, aged cheese, which has, amongst other things, tyramine and also histamine that may cause problems, citrus fruits, caffeine, as we mentioned, nitrates, so nitrates that is in bacon and processed meats and those sort of things, MSG, which is in a lot of processed food and takeaway food, histamine, high histamine foods like alcohol, fermented foods, dried fruits, avocado, eggplant, spinach, processed meats, shelled fish, and once again, aged cheese. Okay, so that's just a bit of a list of things you may want to try on an elimination basis to see if that may help with your headaches. And then essential oils, so as many of you would know, my good friend Kim Morrison, who's the guru of essential oils, and we often have, we always have her 28 essential oils. I'll give her a little plug because I love her, in our home and indeed in my practice. And so things like peppermint, lavender, and eucalyptus oil have been shown for different people to be beneficial for headaches. What I would say with these is just do it gently. So, a drop or two in a diffuser rather than, a dozen drops in a diffuser, because you may well find that if it's too strong, that may actually, once again, that could actually be a headache generator rather than a headache solution. So be mindful of that. Don't overdo it because that might cause you headaches. But in a low level, you may well find that they can be beneficial for headaches. Okay. By the same token, I think, just getting outdoors, getting out into nature and breathing fresh air, and getting those natural smells can also be one that can be really de-stressing to your nervous system. The color green that you get from that nature can be really de-stressing to your nervous system. So actually, perhaps as well as the essential oils, you may actually just want to get out into nature and smell the flowers and the trees, and that may well be beneficial for you as well. Depending on your histamine levels and depending on what you like in terms of, this time of year of spring with the pollens and the allergens and things as well. So be mindful of that. Just having a look here. Alyssa says a couple of foods mentioned I haven't thought of. Thank you. Good ones to try. Alyssa, try them out and let us know how you go. For all of you listening into this one, let us know how you go inside the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group. If you do something that works for you, then make sure you let us all know, so that everyone else can benefit from your little experiment that you're doing on yourself. Yeah, Alyssa says peppermint gives me headaches. So once again, this is, and then Laura says peppermint oil on the temples is good. So that's a classic example of what we're talking about here tonight in terms of headaches, that there is no one headache and there is no one solution. And that sometimes it's about just the fact that there are different headaches and different causes. And sometimes it's more of a temporal response where it's about the quantity that you use. So Alyssa, you may try doing a very, very diluted, peppermint solution, almost a homeopathic peppermint solution perhaps, and see what the difference is if you do it at a really low level, whether that is in fact then beneficial or whether that is actually still negative for you. That'd be really interesting to see too. So essential oils, and sort of following on from that is avoiding strong odors, and so especially artificial ones. So a lot of people, headaches can be triggered by I mean, those artificial scents that get pumped into the air in a lot of places now are a classic example where they can really trigger. But it can be, it can be cleaning products, it can be your washing detergent, it can be, whatever you're using to clean your bathroom. All of those different chemical smells. I find if I walk past some of those stores in the big chain supermarkets that specialize in the candles and soaps and those sort of things, that can very easily give me a headache, just from those really strong artificial smells that they pump out. So be mindful of anything that's quite strong and odorous in your home, and anything you're using. You may want to try using different products, perhaps more natural products, perhaps less smelly products with less perfumes and artificial smells in them. And you may well find that's beneficial in terms of your headaches as well. So do a bit of a check of your home and what chemicals and what smells there are there, and see if you can minimize that and whether that makes a difference. And that really leads into the last point that I wanted to cover tonight. And that is, I think, one of the most important things you can do to help you heal from your headaches is actually keeping a diary. Okay, and so what that might look like is you might write down all of the points we've talked about tonight, and I will put the notes from this talk tonight into the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, so you can very easily make your own list from that. But you might actually make a diary where when you get a headache, you go through that list and you note how you went in terms of each of these categories. What had you been doing in terms of exercise? How much light had you been exposed to? How much sleep had you gotten? What had you been eating? Had you been having coffee? Had you been having alcohol? Had you been smoking? Were you eating any of those headache and migraine triggers? And just keep a diary. And whilst, obviously one time won't tell you much, if you can do that for a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, then you may well start to see some really clear delineation there, in terms of, have I just been to the chiropractor, right? Like, what is it that's making a difference in terms of my headaches? And what do I need to make sure that I continue to do for my headaches? Because once again, headaches are a very individual thing. I think I've said that enough tonight, but individual causes, individual solutions. So keeping a diary of your headaches, I think, is one of the absolute best things that you can do. Is probably going to give you more answers than any doctor, physiotherapist, chiropractor, headache specialist you can find, because nobody is going to know your headaches as well as you. Nobody's going to know, what creates change in your body as well as you. And so really, despite all of the research that's been done in headaches, as I said, because no two headaches are the same, because no two people with headaches are the same, the research really, in many ways, doesn't amount to much in terms of an individual and their headache causes, right? So once again, one of the best things you can do is keep a headache diary, keep track of what you've been doing in the days and weeks leading up to that headache, and see if you can draw your own conclusions about what may or may not be causing your headache. That will then allow you to do your own experimentation, eliminate that thing that you think may be the cause for a period of time. Once again, I would say at least 3 to 4 weeks, to see whether that in fact makes a difference. All right. So that's everything I wanted to go through with you tonight. Actually, I had 23 points on my list tonight. I thought I was going to be going well over the hour, and I've managed to get it done well inside the hour. So I'm quite happy with that. But obviously, if you guys have any additional questions, then please make sure you let me know here before I go, if you want me to answer them for you personally and live. Otherwise, the best spot to do it is to head into that Healthy Lifestyle Choices group. If you haven't jumped into that Healthy Lifestyle Choices group yet, I will actually jump in after this. Actually, it's probably the easiest way to do it. And I'll make sure I edit the link and put it into the notes, or into the description, I should say, of this video, so that you can find that, request access, and I'll answer the questions and I'll let you in. And that's, once again, if you're not watching this live with me right now, but you're listening to this as a recording, that's the best place to go if you've got any questions to ask me. And I do hop into that regularly, and make sure I answer everybody's questions. If you tag me in when you ask the question, that's even better, just to make sure I get it. But generally, I don't think you guys can perhaps let me know, I don't think I miss any. I think I answer all of the questions that go into that group. But certainly if I don't get to it, then prompt me and make sure that I do, because my intention is to answer every single question and help every single person as much as I possibly can within that group. So Tahir says, sometime restarting gym exercise program creating pain. What we need to care when restarting exercise program. Okay, so that could potentially be a whole nother workshop that we do on that one, Tahir. But I think, as a general rule, when you're restarting exercise, the first thing you want to do is make sure you're prepared. Make sure that I often think about it like a car. If you've got a car that's wheels are out of alignment, you don't want to take it for a big drive because it may actually cause more problems than it solves. In the same way, I think if you're starting an exercise program, I'd encourage you to get a check with a chiropractor to make sure that everything is aligned and functioning well, so that structurally and neurologically everything is right. You're able to control your muscles and you're stabilizing muscles as well as possible before you start. And then when you do start, I guess starting slow, where you are in 5 years' time is far more important than where you are in 5 weeks' time. So you want to set yourself up for long-term success. You don't want to jump in too hard too early and either demotivate yourself or injure yourself. You want to build up slowly, and you want to be really mindful of your technique and your form. So particularly when you're starting, if you can get your technique and your form right from the start, not only do you decrease your risk of injuring yourself early on, you increase your risk of being able to do those exercises well later on as well. So as you do add more strength or more resistance or more diversity to that program, you ensure that you have the skill and the technique to be able to do that well and do that safely. So that would be my 2-minute answer to that question. I feel like I could give a full 60-minute answer to that question sometime later as well. So I might have to save that one for a future topic. Just so that you know, at this stage, I'm anticipating that my topic for next month will be all around arthritis. So if you do know someone who's suffering from arthritis, I encourage you to get them into the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, and get ready for that workshop that's coming next time. Tahir says, can you please repeat the point about not killing the headache with a painkiller / self-medicine? I'm not sure what point I made about that, to be honest, earlier, but I guess my point would be that headaches aren't as a result of Panadol shortage or paracetamol shortage. I shouldn't use brand names. Paracetamol shortage. There's generally an underlying cause of that headache, and that's really what, if you want to get long-term solutions, then that's what I'd encourage you to look for and to find. All of these things we've spoken about tonight in terms of natural solutions, I'd be trying all of those before I resort to a pharmaceutical intervention that may have adverse side effects as well. So, once again, you've got to be really careful with those. There are a high number of adverse events associated with those painkillers that people use for headaches. And so I'd really encourage you to be judicious about how you use them. And once again, I'd encourage you to look to some of these natural solutions first to try and create a long-term solution for those headaches. So thank you, Tahir. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you got something out of it. To everyone else, I hope you have a wonderful evening. Once again, if you have questions about this, I encourage you to jump into the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, and I look forward to answering your questions there. Have a great night, and I'll see you all inside that group, and otherwise I'll see you all next month on my next arthritis workshop. See you guys.